Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to a very special edition of Style Speaks. I have a very dear, I guess I better not say old friend. Maybe we can say old friend.
Old enough.
Old enough.
We can age
old
each
enough
other
to,
a little
okay,
bit.
25 years plus. Mr. Daniel Brafman, welcome. Welcome.
Hey, Ron.
All right.
Great to see
good
you,
to
brother.
see you. Good to see you. Glad to have you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Take time out in your day to come and talk to me. All right.
And your fans.
Okay, my fans. So how you been? How you been?
Wonderful.
Good.
Really great.
Now there's a little history with this man and me. We worked together some years ago. Should we say exactly how long?
1982.
I think it was a little later than that. 1984. We started. Well, I started.
I'm getting so old I can't remember.
Yeah, we worked together in Gucci when it was at the Watergate Hotel, the infamous Watergate Hotel, when Gucci was actually two shops, one for men and one for ladies. That was like the only place to purchase Gucci at the time, while the high-end, pre-Tom Ford, pre-all that at the Watergate Hotel, and you know, it kind of started my whole professional business in fashion. I think this guy went a different direction, although once he left Gucci, he went to a few places, but I'm gonna let him talk about kind of what happened from that point. Daniel?
Yeah, so when I met Ron, I was actually studying fashion at the University
You were? Maryland, right?
At Maryland, right? Which was an interesting place to study fashion. You're kind of on your own if you're really into it. At a place like Maryland, it wasn't their specialty, but it was mine. And I had a really good relationship also with Saks Chandel, which owned Gucci, Valentino, Rive Gauche, Gila Roche, you know, all of those places. So
Celine,
I got to
maybe
play
not Celine,
with all of those lines, and also to feature them in a lot of work that I did at the University of Maryland with in-store costume presentations. Around the time that Karl Lagerfeld took over Chanel, so you know, doing productions for the school. I was able to tie a lot of that stuff in together.
You were doing some displays work
I did a lot of display work, but I really did, you know, kind of take off from there, and on my own after college, shifted from women's wear to men's wear, and studied with a Roman tailor, real Roman tailor, who tied my thimble finger to my hand for a month.
Wow.
To make sure that I could actually handle a needle, and I went on to become a couture tailor for men. And sort of in between having businesses and supporting a family, you know, spent a lot of time also in the, you know, high-end retail, so in and out with Saks Chandel, and 13 years at Neiman Marcus, where I became their fashion specialist. I still believe I was the reason why Washington had a sportswear boutique in Neiman Marcus that had lines like Prada, Roberto Cavalli, Dolce & Gabbana, Gucci, you know, Paul Smith. So, you know, I have always had that connection with the high end, and also the high end of service as well. So whether it was through my own clothing company or you know, working for someone else, you know, I've had my hand for 25 plus years in the fashion industry, both as a designer and a salesman and a merchandiser.
Well, while you were you definitely worked in those environments, but obviously you were working on your own thing. I think you were always doing your own personal thing, working on your designs, and while you were working for Gucci and then Neiman Marcus, I would come into Neiman Marcus and see you standing there. You would chat a little bit about what you were working on. But how was it able? I mean, I think you left there. You said about in 2003.
Right.
You left
2003.
Neiman. So, how did you transition to kind of do that on your own full time, or what made you kind of quit that? You know, I don't know if I want to use the word, that comfort level of having, you know, that employer or Neiman Marcus on your, you know, to say you work for Neiman Marcus, and that holds a lot of weight too in the industry. But what made you decide to go head on and kind of branch off on your own at that point?
Frustration.
Okay.
Frustration.
Okay.
So I had just hit a critical point. I'm a bit of a geek. You know, I'm very much a student of everything that interests me. And you know, I was at Neiman Marcus for 13 years, even while I was working on my own couture line. And it just got to a point where I felt like if I didn't move to either LA or New York, where I could make a living doing what I did, and I just wasn't willing to have a long distance relationship with my daughter, who was, you know, living with her mother for the most part here in Montgomery County. So, but one of my other interests was being an athlete. I've always been a bit of a health nut, and I had a specialty, ironically, being a really phenomenal swimmer and a phenomenal teacher of swimming to adults that don't swim. Long story short, a friend of mine, finally said, "Why don't you just be a trainer? Get into the fitness world." Some business came to me very, very quickly. I had enough of a comfort zone around that to know that I could at least make as much money as I was doing something that I could challenge myself intellectually a lot more than I was in a retail environment. So that worked out really well for a few months.
Okay.
And then the race season ended, and I learned that there's a whole rhythm to what I was doing, and fortunately for me, it had some really good advice. And I took on a mentor, a super rock star in the fitness industry, who allowed me to shadow him, and I did that for 2.5 years. And just sort of through my own sort of wonder, because I'm a bit of a geek, but I'm also a bit of a child. I just really am a curious person, and also a very spiritual person. So the more that I learn, the more I realize that the more you know, the less you know. And I kind of went with that. And I started pursuing gurus in the industry that were approaching things very outside the box. They weren't just looking at movement in the fashion, not in the fashion world, but in the sports world, in the fitness world, working with athletes, working with in rehab.
Okay, well, back up a little bit, Daniel, because you went from I want to bring you back a little bit, because when we're talking about if I want to focus a little, if I can, on when you left Neiman's, and you had all these different irons in the fire. You want to get into the whole fitness thing and all these other things you were working on, but you talked about your own fashion line, and you talked about the whole fashion piece. So when you left Neiman's, what was your concentration? I mean, I know
it was to completely change industries.
Oh, okay.
I left the fashion behind.
So that means when you left Neiman's, that's what that meant for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my options to again to backtrack, because you're right with that, is that if I wanted to be what I was and make money doing it, I needed to be in a market where it was just easier to sell the super high-end, super fine couture clothing, which would have put me in LA or New York.
I got you. Okay.
And because of my, wanting to be a responsible father, I stuck around, and I'm glad that I did. And frankly, this 10 years, I consider it a very long pregnant pause, which we'll get into going forward. But I am now ready to get back into some aspect of the apparel industry.
This is so you. I mean, it's really a part of your DNA, my brother.
But with the sensibility of the same sensibility of what I do as a holistic practitioner.
Okay.
So bringing mindfulness, understanding that every dollar that we spend is power and energy, and also just in my holistic practices, whether it's with movement or whether it's nutrition or all of the components that I teach around what it takes to be a healthy person. A big component of what I'm doing at this point is activism.
Okay.
That there's just, without us taking control of the powers that sort of regulate things, a lot of what we need in order to be healthy as people and as communities and have a healthy planet, we have to be mindful of how we spend our money, because things happen in the direction of where money is spent.
Right.
So, for me right now, just strictly as a holistic practitioner, for the past 2 years, a lot of energy has been spent around food issues.
Okay.
Spending lots of time on farms, learning genuinely what good nutrition is from the earth out.
Okay.
So, I see it also as it's the one issue that sort of, if we just look at that, we can heal the environment, we can build communities, we can get things more local. And I want to do that, the same thing like that, getting back into clothing.
Okay.
So, you know, bending culture is something that encompasses all things. It's our health, it's our wellness, it's also our passions, the things that we love. You know, fashion is something that is, it's hard for some people to understand, but the people who are in it, they don't need an explanation.
Right,
It's something
right.
that comes from the heart. It's something that, you know, it's a self-expression. And, you know, so I'd love to be able to have the opportunity to introduce the idea that while you're following your dreams of self-expression, you also develop a sense of responsibility. You know, where do your dollars go? So, you know, is it going to supporting something or someone that's so far away that you'll never really know, or, you know, bringing things back into the community, do simple things. So.
Interesting. Well, you know, he can talk, y'all. You know, I didn't tell you that. He can give you some speech there. Haven't forgot that about Dave. Well, it is so interesting to hear you say that. But and I know you. We've known each other for such a long time, and I, you know, as we sit here and talk, we haven't seen each other in a while, and nor have we had this extensive of a conversation. So excuse me if I'm reflecting here. But back in the earlier days when we worked together at Gucci, you know, you're reminding me as we reminisce about some of the conversations, and I just remember how, even back then, you know, how you were always kind of doing your own thing, and you were very, I thought that you were kind of intense at the time, even though we had a really good time, always had a good time being co-workers and friends. I think we established a friendship after work, because I'm not sure. Now, were you there? Now I'm going back a little bit. Were you there when I started working for Gucci? Were you already employed there, or did you come after me? You were already there.
I was already
because
there.
you was the only young man. We were like the two youngest folks working with all these
Mostly old
mature,
ladies.
right? Really,
Went
you
to
know,
old
proper
Italian ladies
high-end
who would take us
Italian
out for
women
espressos.
that were, you know, that taught you how to walk and talk and hold your fork and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I was telling Michael that I learned a lot in that environment, and even when we transitioned, when we left Watergate and went to the big store. You went up to the big store
Opened
too.
up the Chevy Chase.
Open up the Chevy Chase stores. So it was really. I'm not sure, and I wanted to ask you. I don't know how much I've changed in that time frame, but since then. But how do I seem any different to you? Well, yeah, I got older.
Got a
But
little gray
but
hair,
you know what?
but
You know what I like to
you
tell
still got
people.
a pretty face. You still got a young.
Okay,
a young
a
face.
little flavor. Okay, you gonna get some change for that. But you know, as far as like I used to tell people, because I was very kind of not introverted, but I like to think of myself. But I'm a twin. I have an identical twin brother. He was always the outgoing, gregarious one, and I was always the kind of quiet, kind of calm, shy one. Now I tell people that today, they that know me, they're like, yeah, right, wrong. But you knew me.
I do remember that.
You remember. I was really okay.
you
So
were very
this is
shy.
straight from the horse's mouth. I have some proof to tell you.
He was very, very shy, and
I was like a sponge, though.
you know, a little bit, yeah.
A little bit what? What are you
A little
gonna
bit
say?
secretive, I think.
Okay,
Right? So,
yeah.
You know, it was a different time, and you know, people have reasons to keep to themselves.
Yeah, I was always definitely that way as a child and as a young adult. It didn't take me really until after that experience, because one thing I'll never forget, and I forget who actually you remember her, and I can't think of her name right now. It'll come to me after the interview. So she said to me, you have so much to offer. She said, try to come out of your shell. I was in this shell. I don't know what she saw in me, but she said, you really are cheating people because you're not giving enough of yourself. So try to kind of come out of your shell. And I can't quote her, but you know, it made me think about I was cheating people, and I was cheating myself by just not being free and being who I think I should be, or who I should be. And so that really kind of stuck with me, that someone would just kind of see that in my personality and felt, just like you said, I was very secretive. I was kind of closed, and I was kind of I hate the word reclusive, but I just kind of held a lot in, and I wasn't
a little bit
really
of a withholding kind of
okay.
little bit.
I held a lot
Not
in.
with me so much.
I didn't.
but
Yeah,
only
no.
in
Yeah, you had to
private.
really know me.
Only in private.
Yeah, exactly. It's like once you knew me, I would like open up, whatever. So, it's interesting that I get to sit here and talk to you and think about those times. But, so much for the reminiscing. So, as far as like what you're doing now, Daniel, we talked about that whole transition and what you want to do with the clothing and what you want to kind of come back to and the reason why you kind of left the industry and got into the holistic piece. So where are you now with that whole?
So, as I said before, a lot of my emphasis and energy is put into movement and behavior and nutrition. I still do work with athletes, and there's a performance side to it. I am a holistic health and performance coach, and I'm ready to put on my designer hat again. I have a very a co-visionary partner who agrees with me that we need to bend culture a little bit. Right now, it seems like all of their emphasis on how we spend our money is cheap as possible, as much as possible.
Okay.
So more is better is sort of the trend, the way people spend money. So you see these stores.
That
like
means the
H&M,
quality or the quality.
so everything is discarded.
Right.
It's very quickly discarded, and so our idea is to just start to introduce our own mind viruses, our own little meme, and instead of more is better, better is better. Also to understand that
quality piece over quantity.
Quality,
and that's what I learned back then. That quality was more important than quantity. If you have two, a very nice pair of shoes, a nice coat, or whatever, was better than having a whole bunch of cheap shit as opposed to a few really nice pieces. Right.
Well, there's that, and there's also we all end up having our favorite things that we seem to go back to in our closet, even when we keep buying more and more and more stuff that keeps getting tossed or accumulating, and then we keep saying, well, why am I going to Goodwill so much? Where did all this stuff come from?
Right.
Our idea is just, have that sensibility in the forefront of your mind. Buy something that you think will be something that's your favorite, that you want to wear for a while.
Right.
And so where I am and my partner are looking to sort of reintroduce is going back to natural fibers, and that comes from my holistic world. So this idea that everything is energy, including us, and that when we wear synthetic fibers, it distorts our energy field. So I think it's very important from time to time to not be wearing things that distort that, to let us sort of breathe energetically, which is something that only is going to happen if we only use these super high-tech fibers when they're necessary, and to take advantage of the fact that so much is better than it used to be. So we're using organic wools, organic cottons, and sort of, I like to say I'm reinventing the navy blazer. So you see how the trends in the city have. DC is just a remarkable example of how things are changing. Of course. You see bicycles everywhere. You see bike lanes everywhere.
We're sitting here in Bar de Barre on 14th and R Street, and there's just condos and restaurants going up every other day in this neighborhood. So in our environments, we definitely see the change going on.
And the clothing isn't quite matching the shift in lifestyle.
Okay.
So I see people going to work in the mornings wearing skirts and high heel shoes on bicycles, and it's quaint and it's cute and it's fun, but it's also it's beyond impractical.
Okay.
So we like to create beautiful clothing again that moves a little bit better, that breathes a little bit better, has more longevity, and that supports a person's lifestyle, that they can go from a yoga class to the office and not have to necessarily change other than the very technical parts of the clothing that they wear, that they can get on a bike and commute from point A to point B and feel comfortable doing it, and know when they're just walking around they also still look pretty darn chic. So taking on things like the first thing that I want to reintroduce as a staple back into the fashion world is wool jersey, which ironically is the first thing that put Coco Chanel on the map. So for anybody who really knows their fashion history,
Absolutely.
we're really turning the clock back to step forward. And that's what I'm doing in my food world. That's what I'm doing in my fitness
Don and
world.
Karen kind of works a lot
all
with
of this
both
stuff is just getting back into and also putting some durability back into the luxury world. So it'll be cool. We'll be able to introduce, like I say, something that can be active, but that's also professional, that looks nice, that looks tailored, but because it's knits, it moves well. It's, hard worsted wools are very durable. You can get them in different weights. So, for our different seasons.
He knows his fabrics and stuff, right?
It's all that, right?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
just for me, even having had this conversation with anybody, it was not a leap.
Right.
I've been living with this information for a long time, and now the time is right. The time is right to step back in and say, spend money in a way that builds community around you. Our idea is we'll start manufacturing however we can so we can get there, but as soon as our distribution is large enough, we go into a place that used to have an apparel manufacturing system and revitalize it and give jobs to these places instead of lip service. Go into a place like Baltimore, who's had a long history of an apparel industry, and for the most part it doesn't exist, but the buildings are still there. Get back in there and give some young people some jobs that that are meaningful. And to speak to that, I like to say sometimes our addiction to efficiency and technology, it hurts us as people. Using technology to make things better is one thing, but using technology just so we don't need to hire people.
Right.
I think that's something that misses an old Indian sort of adage. Is that whatever we do of importance, we should consider for the next 7 generations. If what we're doing is making something cheaper, but we're also putting people out of work, perhaps we could bring the two back together. Use technology where it's meaningful, where it heals things, where it makes better products, but don't just push people aside so that we can be cheap.
Well said. Well said. Well, look, Daniel, how does one reach you? If someone wanted to contact you, what's going on? Give us some information where we can find you and stay in touch with you for our general public who's really fascinated about this conversation.
I'd love
before
you
we
to go-
close out.